Welcome to our webinar on the updated 2018 interim assessments. This presentation, entitled the Smarter Balanced Interim Assessments, is designed to provide information about the interim assessments, including new features and changes. I'd like to introduce our presenters. First, we welcome Dr. Christy Alberino, English Language Arts Consultant for the Bureau of Student Assessment. Dr. Alberino has worked on the Connecticut State Department of Education for more than 12 years and served in a national leadership role with the Smarter Balanced Consortium with a focus on English Language Arts across the grades 3 through 8 and the high school grades. We also have me, Steve Martin, and Deirdre Ducharme. Together we have worked with the Department of Education for close to 50 years combined. As a consultant in student assessment, Deirdre led the national development of the reading assessments for Smarter Balanced and supports the assessment of English Language Arts across elementary and middle school. Steve, that's me, has worked on nearly every aspect of administering Connecticut statewide student assessments while serving on several national committees, most recently with regard to the formative assessment practices and with national standards applications in English Language Arts. These presenters bring an in-depth understanding of the many components of assessment-related activities, especially in the areas of formative, interim, and summative assessments. In this presentation, we will look at the various purposes for the types of assessments available from the Connecticut State Department of Education with a focus on the Smarter Balanced interim assessment blocks for both English Language Arts and mathematics. During this webinar, we will provide information about the Connecticut Comprehensive Assessment Program portal and those systems that support the interim assessment, including the assessment viewing application, the test administration interface, and the Airways reporting system. We will offer considerations prior to the use of the interim assessment blocks and share just a few of the numerous resources available to you on both the CSDE and Smarter Balanced websites. Please feel free to contact our office at area code 860-713-6860 with any questions you have following this presentation.
First, we're going to talk about the purposes of the variety of assessments that are available within the Smarter Balanced assessment system. The benefit to using a system of assessments is that the emphasis is not placed on just one component, as in the legacy years when the focus was placed on the end-of-year summative assessments. Now, with the implementation of the Smarter Balanced assessments, we can take full advantage of a comprehensive assessment system that promotes interim and formative measures that offer teachers a variety of tools that make direct connections between the Connecticut core standards and groups of focus skills. These systems can enhance high-quality classroom instruction with the incorporation of tools that support student learning. As we talk about what the purposes for each assessment are, we need to talk about what they are not. The summative assessments are not a tool that informs daily instruction, and they are not meant to be diagnostic measures of individual student strengths and weaknesses. Rather, they are a way to estimate overall performance in a grade appropriate subject area and to make valid interpretations of student achievement and progress. Furthermore, summative assessments should not be the only tool used to interpret student achievement. Summative results are used to inform federal or state reporting, district or school accountability, and program evaluation or identification at the school, state, or district level. Interim assessments, the focus of this presentation, can be given periodically throughout the year. They are valuable measures of domain-level performance, such as reading informational text or focusing on specific mathematical concepts, such as statistics and probability. These short assessments help teachers evaluate student learning and are useful at the grade or classroom level. The formative assessment process is used by both teachers and students during instruction to adjust teaching based on feedback and to allow students to know what they need to do to close their own learning gap. The formative assessment process is not standardized and is embedded in learning throughout the school year.
So what are interim assessments? Interim assessments are just one part of a comprehensive assessment system. This resource is free, and more importantly, it is optional. As we present information on this tool, we want you to think about how this might support your teaching. We are not advocating for additional testing. We want everyone to have a clear and purposeful reason for including these in their professional development or within the classroom. During the presentation, think about what you might get from utilizing these tools. So the quick answer to what are the interim assessments is that the interims are a way to check student progress and to gather information about learning that can alter the instruction provided. Interims offer flexibility, and both the math and ELA interims can be used for professional development or in class with students in a variety of ways. The State Department of Education is not directing if or when you use the interims, but we will caution you to keep in mind the purpose and appropriate use of these assessments. As we begin our discussion of the interim assessments, keep in mind that items were not developed exclusively for the summative or for the interim, but all items were developed with the expectation that they could be used on either an interim or summative assessment. Any items that made it through the rigorous quality criteria and into the item pool were then available for use on the practice test, summative tests, training tests, and the interims. Like the summative assessment, the interims are delivered on a computer using the same test administrator and student interface. The Smarter Balanced assessments, including the interims, are predicated on the fact that they measure assessment targets that are aligned to the Connecticut Core Standards or Common Core State Standards, as these are the same documents. In developing these interim assessments, we include a variety of item types across assessment targets and difficulty levels. Unlike the summative, the interim assessments are not adaptive. While most items on the interim assessments are scored by the computer, such as the traditional multiple choice, multiple correct multiple choice, hot grid, hot text grid, equation and numeric items, constructive responses and performance tasks must be hand scored by trained teachers. Performance tasks for mathematics and ELA challenge students to apply their knowledge and skills to respond to complex, real-world problems. They consist of collections of questions and activities that are connected to a single theme or scenario and measure capacities such as depth of understanding and ability to use complex analysis, which cannot be adequately assessed with traditional assessment questions. Even though the English language arts performance task is no longer incorporated in the summative assessment, it is available for use on the interims. As we discuss the interim assessments, keep in mind that they allow for a level of flexibility that other assessments do not. They can be used for professional development or as a pre or post assessment, especially in the future as more blocks are added. Teachers can choose only one item, such as a brief write or a math performance task, and model appropriate responses in the classroom. They can support the teaching of specific skills or simply allow for exposure to item types in an online testing situation.
The interims benefit both students and teachers. Let's begin with how these assessments benefit students. The interims allow students the chance to practice on a subset of grade-level appropriate focused skills in math and ELA using an online platform, the same online platform they will use when they take the summative. The interim blocks include all types of items that are also used on the summative assessments. Many of these items are interactive and contain built-in tools such as the use of highlighters, notes, or calculators. And because the interims are connected to TIDE, Students who are eligible for accommodations during the summative assessments will have access to those tools, as well as any universal tools available to all students. The exposure to the expectations within the systems is important, and if you opt not to use the interims, we suggest that you at least provide the practice and training tests prior to the administration of the summative assessments. Interims provide a snapshot of students' abilities in a specific skill area. There is a menu of interim assessments available across grades 3 through 8 and high school in both mathematics and English language arts, and they can be used off grade level. Interims are brief and measure a focused set of skills. The results can be used to identify strengths and weaknesses, both at the individual or group level, and help inform next steps for supporting student learning. This can lead to collaborative conversations about teaching within and even across grades. For instance, perhaps a grade 4 class is struggling with mathematical skill. Since the mathematics standards are built on progressions, this may be because they missed something in grade 3. In addition, since the topics are divided into blocks containing grade-appropriate skills, teachers can see a natural fit of the blocks within the curriculum.
There are two types of interim assessments: the Interim Comprehensive Assessments, ICA, and the Interim Assessment Blocks, IAB. The Interim Comprehensive Assessments are not intended to be administered to every student and are the equivalent to the Smarter Balanced Summative Assessment. The purpose for an Interim Comprehensive Assessment is to provide a snapshot of student performance when summative results are not available, such as a new student who just moved to Connecticut from another state where the standards and/or assessments are not aligned to the Common Core standards. An Interim Comprehensive Assessment would also be appropriate to administer to a student who is moving out of grade level. ICAs are not intended to be administered beyond the aforementioned reasons, given the intended purpose of the interim, and considering the amount of time needed to administer and complete the assessment. An ICA uses the same design as a math and English language arts summative assessment for each grade and includes a computer adaptive component and a PT for both content areas, although it is not adaptive. The ICAs follow the Smarter Balanced Summative Blueprint, which is available on the Smarter Balanced website. The ICAs assess the same claims and targets as the summative. There is only one interim comprehensive assessment per grade level and content area. The student must complete both the online items and the performance task within a particular content area to receive an ICA scale score. The school district then needs to hand score any open-ended items in both the CAT and PT, and then only then will a score be generated. The Interim Comprehensive Assessment yields overall scaled scores, performance level designations, and claims score information similar to the summative assessment. You are encouraged to contact us if you plan to administer an Interim Comprehensive Assessment in your school or district. What we really want to focus on are the purposes and benefits of the Interim Assessment Blocks, or IABs. IABs are mini assessments measuring a subset of focused skills. The math IABs contain between 11 and 16 items, while the ELA blocks include between 6 and 18 items. Teachers can select from a menu of interim blocks and determine blocks that best align to classroom instruction at any point during the school year. The use or administration of these blocks can reinforce skills that are being introduced by the teacher, or assess skills that students should exhibit based on learning and mastery of such concepts. For example, a teacher might administer the Grade 3 IAB on fractions following the completion of the curriculum unit on fractions. Results can be used to determine the proficiency of skills at the individual and classroom level. To better understand the structure and design of the interim assessment blocks, we will now look more closely at the specific blocks by content area.
We will begin with mathematics. Mathematics claim results are reported on the individual student reports. So, what is a claim? A claim is a summary statement about the knowledge and skills students are expected to demonstrate on the assessment related to a particular aspect of the Connecticut Core Standards for Mathematics. The first claim is concepts and procedures, and those items measure the extent to which students can explain and apply mathematical concepts and interpret and carry out mathematical procedures with precision and fluency. Claim 2 is problem solving. Items for this claim measure the extent to which students can solve a range of complex, well-posed problems in pure and applied mathematics, making productive use of knowledge and problem-solving strategies. Communicating reasoning is Claim 3. These items measure the extent to which students can clearly and precisely construct viable arguments to support their own reasoning and to critique the reasoning of others. Finally, Claim 4 is modeling and data analysis. Claim 4 items measure the extent to which students can analyze complex, real-world scenarios and can construct and use mathematical models to interpret and solve problems. Remember, Claims 2 and 4 are combined for reporting purposes. Mathematics claims are then broken down into targets. Assessment targets for each claim provide more detail about the range and content and depth of knowledge levels being assessed. For Claim 1, the assessment targets are drawn from the grade level cluster headings from the Connecticut Core Standards for Mathematics and therefore change from grade to grade. For Claims 2, 3, and 4, however, the assessment targets are drawn from the Connecticut Core Standards for Mathematical Practice. The mathematics assessment targets for Claims 2, 3, and 4 are the same across all tested grades. As just mentioned for Claim 1, the assessment targets are drawn from the grade level cluster headings from the Connecticut Core Standards for Mathematics. This example shows the targets as they relate to the domains in grades 4 and 8. As you can see, the target for Claim 1 changed based on the grade level being assessed because the cluster headings change. However, the target is identical to the cluster heading in the respective grade. The targets within Claims 2, 3, and 4 are drawn from the practice standards. In some cases, the target is identical to the language of the practice standards, and in others, while not identical, it is still very similar. Claim 3, Target D says, use the technique of breaking an argument into cases. This language is closely related to Math Practice 3. This can also be seen with Claim 4, Target E, where the target language resembles the math practice language. Additional information about both the claims and their targets is available in the Smarter Balanced Mathematics Content Specifications available on the Smarter Balanced website. The interim assessment blocks for mathematics have been updated this year. A group of math educators reviewed the blocks and made recommendations on how to improve them. This slide is the first of 3 slides that, when combined, form a single table. This first slide shows the currently available interim assessment blocks for grades 3, 4, and 5. The later slides will show the higher grades. In the grade 3 column, you might notice an asterisk marked the geometry interim assessment block. This indicates that this geometry block is new this year. So how many interim assessment blocks are there per grade? In these 3 grades, there are exactly 6 interim assessment blocks available this year. Furthermore, their names are identical across the grades. This makes testing students below or above grade on the same general mathematical concepts possible. These concepts are directly related to the domains at each grade level. This slide shows the interim assessment blocks currently available for grades 6, 7, and 8. Notice that there are exactly 6 blocks available at each of these grades. In grade 8, the new block available for the first time this year is the number system. This final part of the table lists the interim assessment blocks available at the high school. Several new blocks were added in grade 11, and they include seeing structures and expressions, polynomial expressions, geometry congruence, geometry measurement and modeling, interpreting functions, and number and quality. While there is a wide variety of item types currently, all mathematics items are machine scored except some items that are in the performance task blocks. These are the only items in mathematics that will require the teacher to perform hand scoring. When deciding on which blocks to give and when to give them, it may be helpful to become familiar with the blueprint of the block. Each block has its own blueprint, and each provides a variety of useful information. This is an example of the Claim 1 portion of the blueprint for the grade 7 block on expressions and equations. You will notice that the targets assessed are identified along with the number of items related to each target. When you view the blueprints, you will notice that Claim 2 and 4 are listed together because they are reported as a single score. There is one set of targets specific to a problem solving and another set of targets specific to modeling and data analysis. Another point worth mentioning is the depth of knowledge, or DOK, for each target as listed. The DOK for Claim 1 is at a level 1, or at most level 2. The higher DOK levels are found in Claims 2, 3, and 4.
Now let's examine the ELA blocks and blueprints. In ELA, blocks are designed to measure reading comprehension of literary and informational text, writing, listening, and research. With minor exceptions in grade 8, the same blocks are available in grades 3 through 8 and high school. This year, new items were added to the ELA interims and are reflected by an asterisk. In all grades assessed except grade 8, writing skills are divided into writing brief text, brief writes, revision of writing, using appropriate language and vocabulary, and editing skills, which measures conventions. Each grade has one performance task in either opinion argumentative, informational explanatory, or narrative writing. Remember that each performance task block is the same performance task as the one in that grade provided in the ICA. Now let's look at interim blocks that measure Claim 1 reading. Block 1 measures students' abilities to read grade-appropriate, complex literary text. We use a variety of machine-scored item types across all 14 targets. These item types might be single correct multiple choice, multiple correct multiple choice, hot text, and two-part multiple choice items. In some instances, students must demonstrate their understanding by responding to a constructed response item, which requires hand scoring. For example, a student may be asked to explain the main idea, theme, or central idea of a text, and support it and explain it using evidence from the text as in Target 2. The expectation for Target 4 requires students to make inferences or draw conclusions about a text or portion of a text while using key evidence to support and explain their conclusions. These two targets are marked with stars to note that they might include open-ended, short text questions. The same expectations apply when assessing the informational targets as shown on the next slide. Block 2 assesses the ability to read grade-appropriate complex informational text. Again, those targets that might include open-ended items are marked with a star. The ELA blueprints you see here, similar to the math blueprints, also supply the expected DOK for each target included in a block and the total number of items for that block. The number of items per block can change across grades. This grade 4 Reading for Information block currently has 14 items in it. Let's look at those blocks that measure Claim 2 writing. The top writing block shown on this screen is Block 3, and it contains 6 brief writes that are open-ended, short text items. These brief writes require students to write between 1 and 2 paragraphs to respond to the prompt. This means all the responses in Block 3 need to be hand-scored by teachers in the teacher hand-scoring system before a score can be provided in the reporting system for this block. Each brief write provides students with a simulated student-level piece of writing and asks students to focus on one area of writing, such as developing a claim, opinion, main idea, or thesis, or using details and support to elaborate, using transitions, clarifying openings, or tightening conclusions. You might notice that all 3 writing purposes are represented in Block 3, so students at all grades are expected to be familiar with narrative, informational explanatory, and opinion argumentative techniques. The expectation is that student responses are also consistent with the purpose and tone established in the stimulus. Although conventions are not assessed in this block, teachers can certainly see where their students need help in that area when reading these short responses. For all grades except for grade 8, the Edit Revise block has been separated into 3 separate blocks: a revision block, a language and vocabulary use block, and an editing block. Now note Block 4 displayed on your screen. The revision block provides a piece of simulated, grade-level appropriate student writing. All the items in this block are machine scored. Students are prompted to choose a more applicable opinion or claim statement or a stronger concluding sentence. They might be asked to choose information that should be removed from a paragraph because it is not supporting the main idea or detracts from the writing.
For all grades except for grade 8, the Edit Revise block has been separated into 3 separate blocks, 2 of which you see on the screen. The language and vocabulary block focuses on the use of construct relevant vocabulary, the use of concrete words and phrases, the incorporation of effective sensory detail to convey experiences and events, or the ability to choose the best word or phrase to convey an idea in a text precisely. All of the items in blocks 5 and 6 are machine scored. The editing block, block 6, is our conventions block. Here, students will be assessed on their ability to demonstrate an adequate command of correct sentence formation, punctuation, capitalization, grammar usage, and spelling. Before we present the performance task block, let's take a few moments to look at the listening and research blocks. Given how imperative it is that students are able to delineate, integrate, and evaluate content presented orally, we offer a listening block. All of the items in the listening block are machine scored. There are approximately 5 stimuli in each block, each comprising of a 60-second audio on an informational topic. Students will respond to a variety of questions following the audio. Note that the item difficulty or depth of knowledge ranges from 1 to 3 as indicated by the blueprint. There are 2 places where research questions appear in the interim blocks. The first is the actual research block. The second is in part 1 of the performance task. We will begin by reviewing research items within block 8 and then move on to the performance task block. The research block represents items students will see in the CAT portion of the assessments. These are all machine scored items. Students are expected to read a short stimulus and respond to questions about plagiarizing information or comparing multiple accounts of a historical event. Students might be asked to consider evidence provided in a research paper and evaluate its value.
Each ELA performance task block measures more than just the full write. There are 2 hand-scored research items and 1 machine-scored research item in Part 1 of the performance task. As indicated by other blueprints, the blue stars show that there are open-ended responses associated with an assessment target. Once students complete the 3 research questions, they will be prompted to develop a comprehensive piece of writing by responding to a writing prompt. The prompt has a specific writing purpose in which a piece of narrative, informational explanatory, or opinion argumentative must be produced. Responses will be scored on 3 indices: organization purpose, details elaboration, and conventions. Once a student completes the ELA performance task block, the responses are transmitted to the teacher hand scoring system. The system will assign a preliminary score across the 3 indices and requires a trained hand scorer to use the scoring rubrics and training materials to accept or change the score. Once a final score is approved, results will be available in the Airways reporting system. More information on this is also available on the Connecticut portal. We will now discuss the various applications on the CT portal that enable you to access TIDE, the teacher hand scoring system, Airwaves, the online reporting system, and the TA interface, all systems that support the administration of the interim assessments. This is the address for the Connecticut portal. Use the Resources tab, as shown on the slide, to access brochures, quick guides, and other valuable resources. From the portal, choose the Smarter Balance Assessment button on the left side of the page. This gives you access to systems associated with Smarter Balance, such as the digital library, practice and training tests, manuals for online testing, and Smarter Balance resources.
How do the various systems work together to support access to the interim assessments in administration, scoring, and reporting? Educators should use the Assessment Viewing application, otherwise known as AVA, and the teacher hand scoring materials located in TIDE to help them determine which interim assessment block to give students. Then the Test Administration Interface and the Connecticut Secure Browser are used to administer an interim assessment block to students. These are the same interfaces used to administer the summative assessments. The student responses to any constructed response items are available for scoring using the teacher hand scoring system. After hand scoring is complete, data will be available in both the online reporting system and in the Airways reporting system. All student responses, open-ended responses, and performance tasks are available for viewing in Airways. If no hand scoring is needed, which is true for many of our interim assessment blocks, scores will be available in the ORS and Airways following the completion of testing. Each of these systems has their own user guide and training module available on the Connecticut State Department of Education Comprehensive Assessment Program portal. Please refer to those materials for questions regarding specific processes for each of these systems. Take a moment to identify the various applications marked by the corresponding number. Find number 1. The Assessment Viewing application gives viewing access to the interim assessment blocks by grade and content area. Locate number 2. The Test Administration Interface provides teachers and proctors access to the selection and administration of interim assessments. Identify number 3. The teacher hand scoring system provides access to interim assessment items that require hand scoring. And finally, note number 4, Airways provides access to interim reports.
Let's take a moment to access the Assessment Viewing application. The Assessment Viewing application, or AVA, is available on the Connecticut Smarter Balanced Assessment portal. It requires a username and password and allows users to access the interim comprehensive assessments and the interim assessment blocks for math and English language arts at each grade level. For some, AVA may be the first resource to access when determining the appropriateness or relevance of an interim assessment block has in relation to a unit that the teacher is incorporating in class. Use the Assessment Viewing application to preview blocks and the content they are measuring. After administering a block and reviewing data results, teacher may use AVA to review items on which students struggled. Teachers can also use an item to demonstrate a skill they are teaching, such as writing an introduction. The item can be shown to all students, and the teacher can model how an introduction might be written or how a paragraph would be edited. These items can also be a valuable part of professional development. Teachers might work through difficult items and incorporate them in their professional development to prepare for the assessments, to better understand the expectations, or to see how their curriculum aligns to what is being measured. We will now discuss how to administer these assessments. Prior to the administration of the interim assessments, designated supports for all students and test supports and/or accommodations for special education, 504, or English language students must be updated for this school year. Typically, these supports and accommodations are updated in TIDE. However, until the current student information in the Public School Information System, PSIS, is uploaded to TIDE on November 20th, 2017, teachers will need to set designated supports and accommodations using the Test Administrator interface, as displayed on this screen. The TA will have the ability to set the supports and accommodations for each student as applicable prior to the approval of an interim assessment block. After November 20th, accommodations and designated supports set in TIDE will be available to students taking the interim assessments. Regardless, it is always advised that the test administrator verify these supports prior to test administration and contact their district administrator if there are questions or concerns about the student test settings. The Office of Student Assessment will provide more information regarding the submission of test supports and accommodations in upcoming weeks. Refer to the Understanding and Creating Rosters brochure available on the Connecticut Comprehensive and Assessment Program portal or on page 34 of the TIDE User Guide for detailed information on creating or updating student rosters. Once you are in TIDE, you will see a section entitled Preparing for Testing, with a tab for rosters that allows you to upload or alter class rosters. Once the roster is prepared, the second step that must be completed is to download the secure browser. Information about this download can be found on the front page of the Connecticut portal on the right side under Secure Browsers. To administer an interim assessment, you will use the Test Administration card located on the Connecticut Comprehensive Assessment Program portal. Now that you have completed these steps, you are ready to administer the interim assessments. All the interim assessments are accessed through the Test Administration section of Assessment Program portal. Using the same secure Test Administration interface as the Smarter Balanced Summative Assessments, teachers will then select the most appropriate interim assessments for a menu. Once the Test Administration site has been accessed, you will be presented with a menu tree. Remember to choose the interim assessment blocks that you are interested in administering. After selecting the grades of choice, The user will have an option of choosing a content area, English Language Arts, Literacy, and/or Mathematics. Once a content area is selected, the user will be prompted to select an Interim Comprehensive Assessment, ICA, or Interim Assessment Block, IAB. For illustrative purposes, we might choose an IAB Grade 3 Read Literary Text to start the test. The user would select Start Session and follow a series of instructions presented on the screen that outline the steps for starting a session, approving students, and monitoring progress. A new feature added is the Reason for Session drop-down, allowing you to choose a test reason, such as pre and post, or fall, winter, summer, spring, etc. Step-by-step instructions are available in two places: the Test Administrator User Guide or the Interim Assessment User Guide. Both are available on the portal.
How are interim assessments scored? The teacher hand scoring system is the one platform that supports the scoring of the interim assessments. It is accessed on the Connecticut Assessment Portal with a tied username and password, and provides teacher access to open-ended student responses and the ancillary scoring rubrics and training guides that are associated with the specific test items. The first step prior to accessing interim results is to determine if the administered block contains items that are machine scored only, a combination of machine scored and hand scored items, or solely hand scored items such as the writing brief rights or English Language Arts performance task block. Access to data via the Airways reporting system will be dependent on the types of items comprised within the block. For example, blocks that are entirely machine scored will yield immediate results available through Airways. However, blocks containing open-ended items will require teacher training for hand scoring and the actual scoring of these items using the teacher hand scoring system before the data can be available for that block. For now, let's review the process for scoring open-ended responses. Hand scoring of the interim assessments is a local responsibility. It is critical that teachers and hand scorers read the teacher hand scoring system user guide thoroughly and are familiar with the supporting documents, for example, the scoring rubrics, the anchor, and training materials, to ensure accuracy when scoring student responses. While hand scoring training materials can be accessed using the teacher hand scoring system, rubrics, training guides, and exemplars are also available for download in Tide. To locate materials in Tide, sign in and find the General Resources tab in the upper right corner of the page. From the drop-down menu, choose Teacher Hand Scoring Material. Then download the zip files of materials containing the training guides and exemplars. These files are sorted by content area and grade and can be downloaded and printed out if necessary. The teacher hand scoring system contains all interim assessment items completed by students that require hand scoring. Designated teachers or hand scorers will use the teacher hand scoring system to access these items and all scoring material associated with the items. As long as the teachers are trained on the items, scoring may be assigned to a primary teacher or other teachers as appropriate. This may be one consideration to minimize the potential of bias or subjectivity when scoring. However, scoring assignments are based on the discretion of the school or district administrator. After teachers have reviewed the training materials, they will use the teacher hand scoring system to access the student's response and submit the appropriate score.
We will now take a few minutes to show you how to access and score student responses. When you first log into the teacher hand scoring system, you will see all of the responses waiting to be scored. These can be sorted by student name, by item number and title, session, or status. You will choose the response you would like to score and then click on the score button. Scorers and administrators can sort by tests, and then, with the appropriate permissions, assign scores to specific items. As a reminder, as long as the teachers are trained on the items, scoring may be assigned to the primary teacher or other teachers as appropriate. When you choose the score option on the right, you first see the rubric associated with the item, and then below that, the question and the student's response. The item stem and the student's response below the rubric look like this. One place you can access the exemplar set and the training guide is above the rubric for the specific item you are scoring. The teacher hand scoring system gives the scorers access to a training guide, which contains directions for using the materials, a stimulus or stimuli if appropriate, the item stem, a rubric, condition codes, and lastly, a chart of the grade level claim and targets that correspond to the item. The exemplar sets are the same as those provided last year. Each contains annotated and scored student responses for one item, a check set with annotations, and an answer key. As mentioned, the test delivery system automatically suggests a preliminary score on the ELA performance task full right only. These responses are displayed as tentatively scored, as you see on the screen. Scorers will need to review the scoring rubrics, exemplars, and training guides and approve or modify the final scores across the 3 scoring criteria before submitting a final score. The machine-scored suggestion is only available, as I noted, for the ELA Performance Full Ride. More information is available in the Teacher Hand Scoring User Guides. Before we wrap up, just a reminder. We cannot stress enough throughout this presentation that everyone needs to have a very clear purpose prior to administering these assessments. These are optional, as we noted in the initial slides, so think about what you might do with the information you receive from these tests before opting to incorporate them into your curriculum. And please note that the Smarter Balance hand scoring training materials are classified as non-secure, non-public, as well as the interim assessment items. This means that these materials, any items, stimuli, sample student responses, screenshots cannot be posted publicly, reproduced for commercial purposes, or sold. Let's take a moment to review available resources. All the user guides are available on the Connecticut portal under Manuals for Online Testing. For information about student and user management, rosters and appeals, see the TIDE user guide. For information about administering online tests, see the Test Administration user guide. For information about hand scoring questions, use the Teacher Hand Scoring System user guide. And for information about network, internet, and software requirements, use the Technical Specifications Manual for online testing. We also have the Connecticut portal address available. If you're interested in receiving the student assessment newsletter, you can click on the next link or visiting our student assessment webpage on the Connecticut State Department of Ed website. If you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to contact us. And we thank you for your participation in today's webinar.